Okay, it's 3 o'clock, and our next committee of the day is the Budget and Finance Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo. We do have all committee members present. Can we do a quick sound check, Mr. Chair, make sure that we can hear each other? Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Whenever you're ready.
All right, very good. It is 3 p.m. and we will call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? To accept those minutes, please.
Motion to accept. Second.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor, please let me know by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Okay, very good. Thank you. All righty, going back to our old agenda, item number 1, resolution adopting an annual operating budget for the fiscal year 2022. Do I have a motion?
Are we entertaining questions after
Yes. And I did want to bring up to everybody, we do not need to suspend rules on this because this would be the third reading on this. So looking around for hands, Ms. Bowman, did you have a question?
Yes, I just want to make sure that I understand exactly what we're doing today. Mr. Fricker, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Now, I want to know, are we including ARPA dollars in the budget?
Yes, we are. There's one of the budgets that we talked about, that we provided the one-page summaries on. One of those budgets contains all of the ARPA dollars, so that was about $65 million.
Now, that is included in this budget today.
That is correct.
Now, I was told that those were not included. Are you sure with you're asking us to approve these?
Yes, so the ARPA dollars that we are going to spend in 2022 are included in this operating budget.
And included in that are those dollars, the housing 330. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is one of the projects outlined in the ARPA dollars.
And I'm not really sure if I understand what that is. And it sounds like the same thing they're doing for all the other schools, college and career education, but people keep talking about workforce development. I don't understand how you get workforce development out of this. Could someone explain what this is?
Yes. Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
I mean, this is the money that would be coming from ARPA would be to help fund a workforce development program. I believe I sent you that information.
Help me understand how we get workforce development in this primary to junior high school level.
I don't know that it is all at the primary, at the junior high school level. That was not, I mean, I think it was geared towards the families, the graduates, the folks that participate in the wraparound services. It's not necessarily junior high workforce development.
Is there some type of written explanation of these dollars somewhere that we can see before tonight?
I believe I sent that to you last week. I can do that again.
I saw what you said, but that wasn't a full explanation unless you said something else that I didn't see.
Okay, I will send you what I have.
I'm sure if we're going to spend $500,000, is that what we're asking for?
I believe
that is what is included in the
this
budget, yes.
Correct.
If we're spending that kind of money, I would hope that the plan is more detailed than what I saw in what you said.
Happy to.
And the 1.2 mil, this is another question. The 1.2 mil for the Access Point Community Health Center, what exactly is that for?
I believe that we've discussed that on a couple occasions, but I will send, I don't have that specific information in front of me right now, but it's to assist with the build out of their facilities at the old Bell Music. And
Now, I realize that Access Point is located at Arlington, the first location. I know they have one in Barberton, and they had one over here on Broadway, but that one closed. Now, this is a federally qualified healthcare organization. Now, unless this is just for brick and mortar, there are dollars that Access Point can access to expand their operation to provide the services.
And they have.
So, could you just tell me what the 1.2 is for?
that is going to the overall project, which I think is a $4.4 million project. Again, I don't have the specifics in front of me. Happy to send it to you. They have received federal funding for this project as well.
And I understand the position is not on the paper that I have in front of me that we've added to the budget today to hire, what is this position called again? The rehab, is it a rehab housing manager or something, or coordinator?
Okay, if you're referring to the position that was added as part of the amendment that we are introducing today, is that the position you're referring to?
Yeah, what is it? I just want to make sure I'm referring
So
to
that
the right
is,
position. What's it
that's
called?
the position that is recommended by the task force for the Racial Equity Social Justice Task Force to have a cabinet level position dedicated to that function.
So that person's going to oversee all of the DEI stuff that we're trying to do in the city of Akron?
Among other things, I think part of the details on what that person's function is going to be will be worked out, but it would include that function, I believe, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and Ms. Bibiano, you obviously have to help me if there's any hands in the chambers, because I really can't see that.
Yes, I can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
All right, Councilman Malik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. First, Mr. Volman, going off of Councilwoman Amobian's point, was there a proposal, like a formal proposal made by the LeBron James Family Foundation regarding this ARPA funds?
I will look into, it was before my time.
Okay.
But I don't I mean, I know I have the information on it, but it wasn't, what I have is not a document that was presented. It was a summary of what the project was and what the recommendation for spending the money was.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that if there was some kind of written proposal, that might be the easiest thing to share with council. I'm sure that it's a very worthy project. Obviously, the work that they're doing all in and around the footprint is really impactful. But it would be helpful if there was some kind of formal document that could be shared with council. The second, just want to express my appreciation that this amendment is being made and that this funding is being put in place for a cabinet level person to focus on racial equity. I think that's going to be really important to the implementation, and I appreciate that, you know, the concerns that have been raised have been heard. So thank you. And also just want to just say briefly, you know, I appreciate all the work that's been done that has gone into this budget, right? There's a lot that's reflected. There's a lot that we heard during the process that shows, you know, the investments that we're making as a city. The one thing that I would challenge our council and all of us here is just around public engagement. You know, that's one area where we haven't seen a lot of folks in the in the stands here, and we also don't necessarily create the amount of time needed to really engage the public around the budget. I'm not sure that if I went out into the community that we as council or as a city generally are really communicating well what those priorities are and then creating opportunity for real meaningful engagement with folks around the budget. So maybe we can work on this for next year, that maybe we can work on getting the budget a little bit more in advance. I know we're changing the schedule around, and create some opportunities where we really can, outside of public comment or outside of public hearings, really create opportunities for folks to provide input, and for us also to share the stories of all these departments and what they're doing. I know a number of us have encouraged people to watch the live stream and watch the recordings and really listen to a lot of the great work that, we heard a lot of what Mr. Luddle shared about all the different departments in service. We heard, last year about all the departments working through COVID. So I just want to raise that point. I think it's really important that we all focus on real and meaningful engagement with the public. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me come next to Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To my colleague's point about public engagement, the budget is one of the things that we are encouraged to have the public engaged in. So I would urge council, I'm looking at our goals and objectives. We passed some 6 years ago now to put the budget online, where citizens can give their input, and we can have that engagement with the citizens. Now is the time, especially with these ARPA dollars. It's critical that we give them the opportunity to have their input. And they've come to us and said that. Why we don't, I do not know. Mr. Chairman, my question that I raised during committee meetings was for us to get a breakdown. We get a lump sum for every department that just says salaries, and it's this bulk number. When I first came on council, we used to get the breakdown, and we would see what the salaries were based on the different positions, and if there were, not to use a term, excuse me for not having a better term, but placeholders, where there was a plan to hire someone for a position, and that was put into the budget. We do not get that now. I was told that I would get that we would get that information before we were asked to vote. I never received that.
Well, I will say I distributed a document to the entire council that had a count of all the positions by job title for every budget that was presented here. It included the 2021 count, the current count, the pending requisitions, and then the 2022 budget count. So it showed the count of every vacant position for full-time employees in the city for every budget.
Well, I apologize, Mr. Fricker. When did you send that out, sir?
So that was sent out last week.
Can you say what day? I'm gonna surface so I can see if it answers the questions that I had. I apologize. I did not see it, and I kept my eye out for it.
Okay, I think it was sent Thursday or Friday, but I don't remember specifically which day, but it was sent out. It was Tuesday? Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Neal?
I do, but I'll let others go. I'm looking for the document right now, so thank you.
All right, come to Ms. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer my congratulations to the Finance Director and his staff and to every department that contributed to this extraordinary document and process that is the operating budget. This is my first operating budget participation, and it is quite a process. I do share my colleagues' feelings that ideally this is a process that engages more members of the public. This is important. These are public dollars and should be a process that includes many eyes and ears and voices. Ideally, that's what happens. I do, however, really want to take this moment to congratulate everyone in this community for the clear and wonderful win that is represented in the amendment of the budget and the inclusion of a line item representing the resources and space and heartfelt regard for a new position, for a function that will be in the order of a deputy mayor for racial equity and social justice. This represents yet another overdue but so welcome paradigm shift for this community. It represents real collaboration too, and maybe more than anything else, what this moment represents to me is the real regard for all of the volunteers in this community, all of the people who tirelessly put aside their free time to participate in the Racial Equity Task Force and in the many other working groups that go on in this community all the time, year in and year out. This was a real tribute to the work that this group did, the leadership of Bishop Johnson, and the caring and concern that's held by so many in leadership and in every corner of the city of Akron. And I'm just so moved by the inclusion of this item and the consideration of all who were involved in making sure it happened. Thank you.
Thank you for those words. Before I circle back around, is there anybody in the chambers that I've missed?
Mr. Chair, there is no one here with their hands raised at this time.
I'm sorry, you'll have to say that again.
There is no one here with their hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I'll come back to Ms. Amobian.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Volman, you emailed me the tentative plan of the rollout for the rehab project. Did that go to all council members or just to me?
I just sent it to you as you had asked. I'm happy to send it. I had just sent it to you because you had asked me specifically, but I'm happy to send it to the rest of council.
So please send that out to everyone. And I did forward your question. You said it's tentative, but it looks like you are looking at rolling something out in April. Not necessarily doing the work. I think the work is projected to start in, according to that plan, it looks like July, am I correct?
Correct.
And I wanted to know if that was 2022 we're talking about. Is that?
I think I did reply to your, yes, 2022. I thought I did reply to your email, but yes, 2022.
I couldn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Yes, 2022.
Okay. If that's the case, if we could, I appreciate that information. Would like for all council members to have it before this evening. And if that is the plan, then I feel much better about the rehab part of this budget. Recognizing that we still have to identify where we start first. I think we know the census tracts that are impacted a lot about with these dollars. However, I don't know where we will begin because there are quite a few parts of the city that would be able to utilize these resources. So that I'm pleased with. At least we're making some movement toward that direction. I'm trying to find my next question, Mr. Chair. When the small business assistance, the 3.5 million, I talked to Steve Mallard from the chamber last Friday. Are we going to be working together with the chamber, or this will be done through the CDC's? What is the thinking, Mr. Fricker, or have we gotten to that level of detail yet?
We have not fully gotten to that level of detail yet.
Okay.
But my feeling is that we are going to need to utilize our community partners.
So the one area that we're real clear about is parks and public spaces, the 16.1 or 16.2 mil that we are doing these projects this year. And they will start this spring. Am I correct?
Yes, correct. So the park projects outlaid, and many of these might, end up being multi-year projects. A number of these, we took the total project amount and, did some percentage that would occur in 2022 with the remainder to be completed next year.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, looking around, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to apologize, Mr. Fricker. I looked for what you said you sent. I did not see it, sir. If that could be resent so I could study it before we're asked to vote this evening. I saw something that had the overtime. I did not see the other breakdown. I went back from the 21st and worked my way back up, so I may be missing it.
I can forward it to you again if that makes things easier. I'll just forward that to your email after this this committee is done. Yeah.
It came from Sarah.
I appreciate that.
Councilman Neal?
Mr. Chairman,
Tell him.
to Councilwoman Amobia's point, if it's possible for us to even go back to the capital budget and just get a separate breakout of everything that has ARPA dollars connected to it. I know it's inside the budget. I know we've gotten it, but I'll just speak for myself. I can't tell in every category where that is, but if we just had a cheat sheet that listed all the projects that had ARPA dollars, then I think for us on council what would help is being able to look at that and compare it to the metric that brought those dollars to our city to make sure that we're being compliant. We all know they came because of our poverty rate and our housing instability. So, we'll be able to look at our projects and see if they're at least hitting those two metrics that brought those dollars to our city. That would be helpful for me, because I know that's one of the things that our city is going to be held accountable for. The other thing, we're in the budget hearings, and we mentioned this last week. All of us were, we had folks that came out to our meetings about ARPA dollars. And if your meetings were like mine, people were passionate about having input on how these dollars were spent. We're in budget hearings. We have not allocated one dime of ARPA dollars to our wards. If we go back to the initial request from our colleague, Councilwoman Mosley, she didn't have an equitable allocation. She said if we just look at an equal allocation of what we just given each ward like we did with the COVID dollars, a base amount. If we just took 10%, that's 1.4 for each ward. And then we can be more attentive to the needs, because the needs in my ward may not match yours, Mr. Chair. But if we don't take the time to do that now when we're in budget hearings, when do we do that? So that's my third thing about making sure that we have ARPA dollars. We have discussion about ARPA dollars now for our ward. We can't push that off. And then last but not least, we're at a point where the most critical conversation we've had, we've engaged the community members. We've got the independent report from the Brookings Institute about, and we've received the equity report. When I look at our goals, there's nothing for us, unless I'm missing it, and I've got them up in front of me, nothing dealing with us getting one training about equity. It's not enough for us each to have our own definition. We need to have a shared definition so that as we create policy and as legislative requests come before us, we can understand if what we are implementing is equitable. And so now that we are in the period when we are to do the planning and allocate the dollars for things like ARPA dollars for our ward, putting citizen engagement tools online, be it our budget online, so they can track our legislation online and comment. All of these tools are out there. To training ourselves and having an understanding of how to support the Race, Justice, and Social Equity Task Force report that came before us. Now's the time for us to do that, Mr. Chairman. I just feel that based on what we've been able to do to this point, we have not been able to set any kind of goals to address any of the things I just spoke about, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Is there another hand?
There is. And I also wanted to let everyone know, I did forward that information on Tuesday, and I just forwarded it again just now, so you should see it in your inbox. And if you don't see it in your inbox, it is in the agenda portal as well. And Mr. Chair, Councilman Fusco has his hand raised here.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have to make sure I speak up. The ARPA dollars, just in terms of ARPA dollars, I think it's been obvious from the beginning that these dollars are going to be programmed for certain areas of our community per the definition from the federal government. And I know that a lot of my colleagues here that will not qualify for some of these funds would love to see that money go into their neighborhoods. However, though, in terms of the consultants, they did mention that there could be pathways there. But I think we all kind of realize that the majority of the funds are going to be going to the hardest hit communities. That given, also given the fact that I believe it was last month, February, I believe it was, is that when we finally got the final marching orders,
so
if you will, from DC?
Correct. The guidance, the final guidance was only, very recently released.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's, and if you could forward that to us, I think that would be helpful as well. I know some of us here have been watching that as also. And the online portal, in terms of ARPA, which is an exchange, from what I understand, is going to be an exchange between the community as well as reporting to the community where the funds will be allocated. That's soon going to be revealed?
Correct, yes. So we have seen kind of a beta copy of that, if you will. Some of that functionality has been built out. We do anticipate that being released to the public in a matter of weeks. So.
Gotcha, okay. So I do believe that all of Akron is going to benefit from ARPA funds, but I think a lot of us understand too that a lot of the ARPA funds is going to be provided within the hardest hit communities as outlined from the federal government.
I think that is a fair statement, yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, the guidance provides that it be invested in areas, as I've said before, one of the key guidance items is some of these dollars need to be invested within qualified census tracts. So, so the projects that we have defined allow for those dollars to be invested in that manner.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, I would recommend, and I'm happy to talk to the leadership, Margot Somerville, in terms of the parks piece, which I certainly appreciate those comments as well. And perhaps what we could do is a capital budget review in terms of parks specifically, in terms of those 3 or 4 parks that we've identified as parks that we're going to be improving over time.
The projects that are listed in the on the ARPA page and the ARPA budget that we're doing were largely, lifted from what was defined in the capital budget. So it's appropriating those dollars that were defined in the capital budget here in the operating budget.
Exactly right, but it's, I understand that there may be an appetite to get an update on that, which I'm certain that we can do. Schedule a time to do that and cover that, so thank you. And again, thank you and everyone who's done all the work here in terms of the committee, the chair, everybody on council here who has spent the time. And I know it's somewhat of a stressful time here this first quarter of the year going over the budgets. Budget week is always a challenge for all of us here. So thank you for all your good work on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sarah, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Councilman Malik has his hand raised here in chambers.
Okay, very good. Councilman Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This discussion has prompted 2 more questions about ARPA, so please bear with me. The page, first of all, thank you for the page. I think it's at the end of the budget overview that
Correct.
defines all of the ARPA spending, right? So all of the ARPA spending should be reflected in that page, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. It reminded me of one question. There was a recent post on the city Facebook page that mentioned that some of the ARPA funding would be used for police and fire. And I guess, we had never heard that as an idea before. I wasn't sure whether that was a reference to the revenue replacement or to something else. And so just wanted to get a better sense of that.
So we have defined some dollars, as we talked about before, for premium pay and revenue replacement. So, some of those dollars in those areas would be directed towards police and fire.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is around the dashboard. I think, a lot of this discussion has been about, the implementation of the programs that have been proposed. Is the dashboard going to show kind of ongoing progress on the amounts that are being spent as they're expended?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Right.
And then finally, want to echo Mr. Fusco's point. Really appreciate the responsiveness of you, Mr. Fricker, and Ms. Willems, of you over the last few weeks in responding to all the questions that have been raised. I really do appreciate it.
Right.
So
I'd
thank
like
you.
to also give some praise to my staff that assembled a lot of the answers for the questions that were asked by this council. So they put a lot of work to assemble all that information.
All right. Ms. Moby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The project administration, remind me, Mr. Fricker, what that is. It's under the city budget stabilization.
Right, so that provides for the consulting dollars for Guidehouse and then some of the legal costs that we might have. So we have a contract with the Voorhees law firm to weigh in on any legal issues that might come up related to the spending of the ARPA dollars. So it's in those areas.
Have we paid Guidehouse anything yet?
Yes, we've paid for services going back into late last year. So I think to date it's been, well, I'll get you a number on that, because we have ongoing invoices right now, so I don't want to say without looking at the invoices, but we have paid for both Voorhees and for
It would
Guidehouse.
just be helpful to know how much we paid them thus far. Are we expected to have any more consultation with Guidehouse, or I mean, they haven't been in any meetings lately. I wasn't sure if they were still working with us.
They are absolutely still working with us, so they are an integral part of us. Now that we're kind of getting into the reporting phase, I know we've had a number of calls, within finance and many of the other departments related to building out the reporting and how we're going to structure the gathering of all that information. So we are working with Guidehouse every day.
Okay. Just one more question, Mr. Chair. Because we believe, based on what I hear, that many of these dollars, if not most of them, will go into the census tract areas. And I think that is why I've been asking so many questions about the rollout, because we have that information in terms of those areas. And I do believe that hopefully the next step would be, how do we roll something out in those areas? I realize you need to have some contracts with vendors and contractors and so forth, and I know that that's part of what you will be working on. But that's part of what you shared with me, Mr. Volman, in the email that I want you to send out to the other council members. So again, thank you for what you have done thus far, and I believe that's all my questions at this point. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ms. Amobian. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this document I did receive, but it doesn't have the salary positions. We've got a bulk thing that says salaries under each category, but with this breakdown, there are no salaries associated with it. So that if we were to want to do a breakdown on, like, what's the total pending dollar amount, can't tell. And it shouldn't be hard for us to get that information, since all of our, whatever we're paid is public information.
It's public information, but the way that that report was compiled, I didn't do it using the salary matrix. I did it using the employee count data that exists in Workday. So it's just the way that report was prepared. So I didn't have anything built out that had the vacant positions by salary. So that's how I provided the information.
Well, I appreciate that. So if you just give us something with the filled positions, since it looks like, well, no, there are a few vacant positions, possibly where there may be something pending. But I mean, we could go back and look at that. Is it possible to get a report that shows what the salaries are for the positions, so that we can see where there is someone already in that position, and then there's something pending, we can get an idea of what the total pending dollar amount is.
I mean, I could assemble some type of report. It would be rather time-consuming to do that for all 2,000 full-time positions to determine. I mean, I could run you a salary on any position in the city, but to break it down across all those different categories would be, I don't know, a little bit challenging. It could be done. It's just something that would take a little bit of time to compile. Keep in mind, the other thing I would say is keep in mind,
you're looking for.
yeah, keep in mind that those vacancies are changing.
From the last time that we started, I mean, if we could just start with the cabinet and council, and then I can get the others later, because in the past, one of the challenges that, from a question that I asked, and I'm going through several budget hearings back, is we would budget as we should. Let me state, as we should, for positions that we hope to fill. But then we wouldn't fill them, and that money would go back into the general fund. And the question was, okay, what happens to the money when it goes back to the general fund, and how much? And it was a rather significant amount that would go back.
So it's not necessarily within the general fund.
No, but then the other thing is, because we have a capacity issue, and the document that Mr. Fricker sent right here will help me understand that. The positions that we're hoping to fill. What's our present level of capacity with those that we have? And I'm assuming these other positions are because we need these people to help us fulfill not just our regular, budget agenda items, but now the extra work that's coming with the ARPA funds as well. So we could just start with the cabinet and council, and I can get the rest, later.
Okay, I will provide a report of the cabinet and council positions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, am I missing any hands?
There are no hands raised here in chambers, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. There is one now. Councilman Malik has his hand raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Mr. Malley?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if there aren't any other comments, just want to make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Okay,
Actually, we
is there
don't,
a second?
we don't need to suspend the rules, so it would just be for a favorable report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 And opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. Next, we have, a substitute. I'm going to ask Ms. Bibiano if you could read that in for us, please.
Sure. This is a substitute offered as an amendment offered by Freeman, Somerville, and Fusco. Ordinance to make the annual appropriation for the current expenses, other expenditures, and the capital outlays of the City of Akron for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Fricker?
So, as always with the budget, there are two separate pieces. So the piece that we just, that was just voted on was the resolution. This piece that was just read in is the substitute for the appropriation ordinance itself. So, as we talked about, the only change in this ordinance is that we added $100,000 in the mayor's office general fund. $95,000 is in the labor component, and $5,000 is there for any supplies or, that the new position might need. So that's the only change between this ordinance and the one that was presented 3 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fricker. And looking around to see if I had any comments or questions.
Mr. Chair, Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Malley.
If there aren't any comments or questions, since this is substantially the same as what we've been discussing, I want to make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malik. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And then I have my screen back up here, Sarah, so our next is an ordinance authorizing an agreement between the local 1360 Ohio Council 8 of the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees Bargaining Unit and the City of Akron regarding employee wage increases through the calendar year 2022, providing for these adjustments to apply to all employees to the non-bargaining, management, and unclassified job classes, as well, all in furtherance of the mayor's commitment to appropriately address changes in the cost of living, to attract and retain qualified employees, all while economically utilizing taxpayer dollars to provide vital quality services to the citizens of the City of Akron and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the wage ordinance that pertains to both the ASME bargaining unit and all non-bargaining employees. So it's basically all employees that are not in either the police, fire, or CSPA bargaining units. It's a 1-year wage ordinance that provides for 3.25% wage increases. Typically, we do a 3-year agreement because we only have a 1-year agreement with our ASME unit. We're doing a 1-year wage ordinance for ASME and non-bargaining employees.
Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look this over. If it would entertain any questions, but I'm hoping we could maybe place this on the consent agenda, give us some time to look at it this week and ask any questions. See us wanting to pull it off the consent agenda next week, but if we could put it there, that's what I hope I could get a motion for. But we'll open up any questions or comments. No?
planning to do this?
When are we planning to do it? Was that the question?
Yes.
So upon the passage of this ordinance, it would probably take us, maybe a week or so to get things configured in our payroll system. The increase would be applied retroactively back to the beginning of the year, as we have done numerous times in the past. So we would adjust the current wage rate for all these employees, and then that would be applied back to all of the payrolls that have been paid so far this year, and that difference would show up in one of the weekly checks as soon as that retroactive payroll is processed.
I mean, when were you hoping to do it? Because that would determine whether we do what the chair is suggesting or the suspension of the rules.
Right, I mean, I think it's, if the council wants to take a week, that's fine. We could do it on consent, and then we would process that retroactive payment.
I move consent, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Amobian. We have a motion for consent.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
All in favor of placing this item on the consent agenda, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And we'll see that item is placed on the consent agenda. And Sarah, I believe that's it. Am I correct?
Mr. Chair, Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, Councilman Malik.
Thank you. I don't have any objection to this being on the consent agenda, but I did have a few questions.
Oh, okay, please proceed. I'm sorry. It's a bit different on this end.
No problem. So just a couple questions. First, how many employees are covered in the AFSCME bargaining unit?
So AFSCME has about 300, and this is this count that I took at a static time, it has 366 employees, so somewhere in that neighborhood, 360 to 370 employees.
Okay, thank you. And how does this cost of living increase compare to any cost of living increase under the current police or fire contracts for this year?
So we do not have an agreement with the police and fire the police and fire union, so this is just for AFSCME.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense of when we might have a contract for them?
We are currently in negotiations.
Okay. Is it anticipated that there will be a similar increase for those employees as with these employees?
I can't really speak to that.
Okay. And then a similar question, this also applies to a similar cost of increase for people in the unclassified service, right?
That is correct.
And when was the last time there was a cost of living increase for unclassified employees? Because I don't believe there has while I've been on council.
There was, in 2021, there was a 3%, yeah, that was part of the previous agreements with all four of the bargaining units, and also applied to non-bargaining had, it was a 3% wage increase in 2021.
Okay.
That was the third year of that agreement. Yeah.
Okay, and so this is 3 1/4.
No, this is 3 1/4. Now, keep in mind, this is only 1 year, so we do not have a 3-year agreement in place as we typically do here. So this is just for 2022. So it doesn't provide for any cost of living increases next year.
Okay. Well, I understand that we as council are not at the bargaining table, and you all are, but I do hope that any cost of living increase for AFSCME and for unclassified employees can also similarly be applied to safety forces and CSPA. Obviously, I know we all value all of our employees. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. With that, it's 3:49, and we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, each and every one.
That is the final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet at 7 p.m. tonight. Thank you.